The Swag Bag, brought to you by the Sports Stop of New Hampshire. Everything lacrosse. Visit sportstopnh.com.
Kyle Devitte, our weekly guest, joining us on the phone this week. We had him in studio the first two shows of the season, but he joins us now via the telephone. And, of course, he is presented by the Sports Stop of New Hampshire, your locally owned and operated one-stop shop for everything lacrosse. Sports Stop of New Hampshire carries all brands of lacrosse equipment for both boys and girls. It's easy to get to. They're partnered with one of the country's largest .com retailers, so if they don't have it, they can get it. Whether it's beginner packages, team sales, or a huge selection of restringing supplies, Sports Stop of New Hampshire knows your team. Sports Stop of New Hampshire, 273 South River Road in Bedford. Call 603-606-1921 or email lacrosse@sportstopnh.com. Kyle Devitte, Inside Lacrosse Magazine. Good morning, sir.
How you doing?
We are good. We are good, sir. You sound loud and clear this week on the phone, which is a good thing as usual. What should we be looking for? What should we be talking about equipment-wise? What are you guys doing this week over at Inside Lacrosse Magazine and also, of course, over at Sports Stop in New Hampshire?
You know what I really wanted to talk about? I wanted to flip the script a little bit and talk about women's lacrosse this week.
Okay.
I thought that might be a nice change of pace.
Sure.
I think one of the things that people, when they get involved with lacrosse, they always look at it from, especially if they have boys or you know are involved in that, it has a higher profile than the women's game. But the rise of the women's game is really something that we've been covering extensively at Inside Lacrosse. Especially this year, we had our first group women's cover last month. The Maryland team, thankfully, they are undefeated now, so we don't look foolish, 2 months later. And the rise of women's lacrosse is huge. And with the rise of women's lacrosse, the rise of equipment and sticks being disseminated among players is also on the rise. I just want to throw a couple numbers at people. There are 107 Division I women's teams. Now, I don't know if the coaches, do you know how many men's D1 teams there are in college lacrosse?
60-something. 62.
69.
69, okay.
69. Women's lacrosse Division II NAIA, which is, not necessarily recognized by NCAA, but can give scholarships. There are 116 women's teams, and Division II, you can give out partial scholarships. There are only 59 Division II men's teams.
Now, why is that? Why is that? Because a lot of folks, I would think, the guy on the street would think it the opposite.
Well, I think cost is a big part of it, and I think it's not out of the realm of possibility to suggest that Title IX is part of that. But I don't actually look at that in a negative way. I think a lot of people approach when you say Title IX, they go, yeah, that's why my school doesn't have, football or something. And that's not fair, in my eyes. And people misinterpret Title IX as something to give, it's charity for women's sports. And it's not. It's equity based on the population of the school, for athletes. So I think that, the rise of the women's game, and there's so much proof that it is the next big thing. I mean, if you have a daughter and a son, your daughter has a better chance of getting a lacrosse scholarship than your son. That's just a numbers game, and yes, men's teams are larger by and large, 45 to 50 players. Women's teams are typically, even Division I, cap out at like 35 for the most part. Some of them go to 40. But I think that's something that parents and people listening to the show really need to take to heart, that women's lacrosse, there's so many opportunities in it. For female athletes, and if someone's good at basketball or soccer or something, and they haven't tried another sport, field hockey has a huge crossover. Even ice hockey has a crossover. I think women's lacrosse, if you're an athlete, it's just really an excellent sport. In my opinion, takes a lot more skill to play women's lacrosse than men's lacrosse.
Kyle Devitte, our guest of Inside Lacrosse Magazine. You're listening to FNL Lacrosse here on ESPN New Hampshire. We know about the girls' game. It's a little different than the boys', different rules, etc. What about the equipment? Is it comparable to the boys' side, or are there some real distinct differences when it comes to equipment when you talk girls' lacrosse?
Well, there's a lot of differences, mostly because there's far less of it. Goalies are, by and large, the only position that's exactly the same as men's because they all have to be padded and whatnot. They're still trying to stop the ball from going into the net. But as far as like sticks, the one thing that we've seen as a trend increasing, especially in the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years, is that women's sticks are becoming more of a high-end item. Whereas you could buy a stick, and you still can buy mid-range sticks from like $60 to $85, and you're fine for any level of lacrosse, women's lacrosse. Now there are special edition sticks going for. I mean, STX has a Crux special edition that's $300 right now as a complete stick. Their top, it's actually a limited edition version of their top-selling head, which is the Crux 510 degree women's stick. And the thing about women's sticks, too, is most of them come strung from the factory. And there is like a little bit of a movement to kind of get away from that and have people do more custom stringing for women's sticks. But by and large, that's how it goes. And the price point is increasing, but there's still great options under $100 out there. Just sticks that come to mind. The Brian Mantra 2 is under $80. The Devitte NV3, which has been around for it has to be almost 8 years now, is $75 strung, $60 unstrung. The older versions of the STX Crux you can get for around $80. There's a lot of great options for players that don't necessarily want to spend the $130, $140, $150 for a top level women's stick. But if they do want to spend that, that's fine as well.
Kyle, sorry, Coach. I will say that Sports Stop does a great job stringing up custom stringing because my daughter has all 3 of her sticks over the past years have been done at the Sports Stop, and they do a great job stringing up that crutch, especially. It's gotten to the point where the factory strung sticks are just it's too much like a tennis racket. The girls' sticks are designed more. I'm seeing it where you can have a little bit of that deeper pocket because of the design of the head, and it is important that to go and have someone go in there and look at it at least. But they do custom string, and they do a great job there at the Sports Stop. Sorry, Coach, you're up.
Oh, no problem. I was just going to ask you, for girls out there listening that might be interested in buying the higher end sticks, what are they getting out of that? What are they selling as far as the advantage to that stick over a more of a mid range stick? What's is it? Maybe Coach touched on it. Is it the ability to string it differently? Does it have more torque on it? What does it allow?
To me, the biggest trend is towards design and ball release. To not necessarily get a faster shot, but a snappier shot, if you will. Something that comes off the strings, almost akin to a men's stick, with a pocket that hits a ramp to come out. The Crux is one of the heads that really went crazy with this, where they really put a large bend about 3/4 of the way up the stick and a sharp angle, so the ball can't actually really hang anywhere else near the top of the scoop except the release point. It's kind of like a men's pocket that's really well strung with a high pocket where you can cradle and the ball kind of floats up. With a women's stick, all of your cradling is basically vertical. So when you're with these heads that have that sharp change in the design and the angle, it's easier for the ball to sit there with a hard cradle. It takes a little more skill, but the result is a snappier release, a different feel for the ball than you would get with anything else. And that design is actually a continuation of the evolution of the women's stick that really started, I would say, around 2002 to 2005 with the Devitte Apex was a stick that almost every women's player in college had, and it was different because it had a very, again, another bend, but much less sharp than the Crux and a little more rounded towards the top and the bottom, so the ball could sit and you could cradle kind of without as much effort, but also have that snappier release. And now you see all these heads that are out. I mean, there are companies, Under Armour is making heads now. A lot of companies, Maverick just launched their women's line this year. So there are these different companies coming in and trying to put their stamp on the design, variation on the design, and try and really get a head that makes it not necessarily easier, but more accessible to any player, and also more customizable for the advanced players.
All right, Kyle, we're going to change gears on your end. We got two big college games today. Syracuse-Duke for the ACC Championship at Philly. I need a pick there. And Colgate-Army for the Patriot League Championship.
You better say the right
Wow.
thing.
I love Syracuse.
Right,
Kevin Rice is my favorite, easily one of my favorite players in college lacrosse. The most technical men's player in college, in my opinion. So I'm going to pick Cuse there. I really want to pick Army because, I have similar love for John Glesner. But at the same time, I cover MLL, so I want them to lose so we can play for the Cannons next week. I'm going to go with Colgate just because.
You're going to go with Colgate?
Sorry.
And then the NCAA, for the first time, they came out with the men's lacrosse committee came out with what they see as rankings, kind of like the BCS poll, where you had Notre Dame 1, Carolina 2, Syracuse 3, Maryland 4, Denver 5, Duke 6. For the most part, those are the 6 teams I think that can win a national championship this year. Maryland's loss last night to Johns Hopkins kind of moves Maryland almost from that 4 to 6 danger slot right there. What do you think about that? First off, about that NCAA committee coming out with that?
I think that's more for them to cover themselves because they're going to have to seed teams to get at-large bids. And the conference tournaments, like you said, aren't played yet. And those AQs, the Big Ten has an AQ, the ACC has an AQ. If the right team wins that, then the argument is moot. If the wrong team wins that, then you're worried there. You're looking around and you're going, all right, well, we don't have. What are we going to do? We're going to use RPI. We didn't even explain RPI to people. Like, what are we doing?
Well, it's not going to change. Those top 6 are
panic.
locked in. Those top 6 are not going to change no matter what. I mean, as far as anyone breaking the top 6.
Oh, absolutely not. And I agree with that. I think that there could be some movement of those 6 teams up and down 1 or 2 spots. But as far as, listen, how many teams do you think can win the championship this year?
I think Coach said, I think there's 6 teams.
6 teams.
Do you think all 6 of those teams can win?
Notre Dame, North Carolina, Syracuse, Maryland, Denver, and Duke. Any one of them could win. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I think I've been in this position from the beginning, and we do a weekly poll, and I get a vote in the media poll for the top 20. The top 10 has been so easy to do this year because there are this glut of teams that are very high level, play at a high level, can beat anybody, can beat up on each other, and we've seen that especially from Notre Dame, Syracuse, UNC, these teams, Denver at times. And I think that once you go past those teams, I don't think there's anybody that is even sniffing a championship this year outside of those 6. So maybe the better answer to your question of why did the NCAA do those rankings is, well, hey guys, don't really expect anyone else to come out of anywhere crazy. I think the only team that people are even scared to play in the tournament is Albany.
I was just going to ask you who outside the top 10 or outside those top 5 or 6 do you see there? And you said Albany. You got any other sleeper picks as a potential first round upset or a nightmare for somebody?
I got to tell you, I love how Brown plays, and if they play the right team, they don't have there are ways to stop them. But if they play a team that's not prepared, or they play a team that is not able to score on them, they'll or control the middle of the field, which is what Brown does best with all their skilled long poles. I think Brown can shock someone, but then again, they might not even get in. They have to beat, they have to probably win the Ivy. I would say they have a couple signature wins. The win over Cornell helps because Cornell beat Princeton yesterday, and that kind of ups their ranking a little bit because they were on a downslide. But I would pick Brown. I love watching Brown play, and they have that style that they can blitzkrieg someone and score 5 goals in less than 5 minutes.